What is Helen's Law? Who was Helen McCourt and what does it mean for killers who won't reveal where their victims' bodies are? The so-called Helen and X27:S law, which will prevent parole for killers who refuse to reveal the location of their victims and X27 bodies, has failed to get a mention in the Queen and X27:S speech. MPs backed the law, named after murdered Helen McCourt, in October after a petition to have it introduced gained 343,000 signatures, but there are now fears it will not get a second reading and finally be made into a law. Helen McCourt was a 22-year-old insurance clerk who was murdered in Billinge, Merseyside on February 9, 1988. She vanished on her way home from work and her body has never been found. A police investigation was launched with cops eventually being led to the George and Dragon pub where killer Ian Sims was the landlord. Helen had worked there as a barmaid and was a known regular. The tragic victim's blood and fingerprints were found in Sims' flat above the pub, and part of an earring matching one of Helen's was found in the suspect's car. Later clothes belonging to Helen and Sims were found at two separate locations. Sims still insists he is innocent and has remained in prison long past his 16-year sentence. Last year he was moved to an open prison and could be released sometime in the future. 05 Officially known as Unlawful Killing, Recovery of Remains Act, Helen and X27:S law states that killers should be refused parole if they do not reveal the location of their victim's body. The prisoners would remain in prison for the rest of their lives if they refuse to cooperate with investigators. Introduced by Labour MP Conor McGinn, whose constituency includes Billinge where the murder happened, politicians voted in favour of the law on October 11, 2016. It was hoped the law will have a second reading in Parliament, but Mr McGinn now fears that this will not happen because it was not included in the Queen and X27:S speech. Yet the MP is determined to press ahead and will bring forward the bill again. The Ministry of Justice point out that judges already have the ability to take non-disclosure of bodies into account when sentencing cold-blooded killers. Critics also point out that the law could impact prisoners who have been the victims of a miscarriage of justice. Mr. McGinn, who has worked closely with Helen's mother Marie, said, "No one should be forced to endure the anguish that Marie McCourt and her family and the relatives of other victims have suffered." Helen's law will hopefully go some way towards helping put right the terrible wrong that has been inflicted on them. Determined Mother Marie hopes the law will encourage murderers into cooperating with police. She said, "To take a life is bad enough, but to then hide the body and refuse to disclose where it can be found is an act of pure evil." Read more. Who was Sandy Bowen? When did she disappear? What was Mike Bowen's motive for her murder, and have there been any developments? Inside murdered Gran's home destroyed by junkie who strangled her to death and has been jailed for life. Thousands of people visiting the site of Fred and Rose West's house in Creepy Craze, where people flocked to scenes of murders and disasters. Who was Robin Mercer? Antiques dealer who was murdered as she put out the bins. All you need to know.